My name is Beth Cooper Benjamin. I am Director of Programs and Peer Networks here at the Jewish Funders Network. And I am in that role coordinating the new Green Funders Forum for North America, and I'm so pleased to finally be getting this plane off the ground. I know some of you have been waiting for this for quite a while, and we're very pleased to bring it to reality and launch it. Um, I am so pleased to be able to bring you this conversation and to know that we will be following this session with monthly sessions that we will make sure that we let you all know about going forward. There will be ongoing opportunities to engage with this community. For now, I really want to welcome my colleague from JFN Israel, Gil Yaacov, who leads the Green Funders Forum in Israel. And Gil is going to let us know a little bit for those on the North American side who have not been involved in the Green Funders Forum. Let us know a little bit about the work that his group has been doing and some advice for this new community that we're launching. Welcome, Gil.
Thank you, Beth. It's really nice to see everyone and also to recognize familiar faces. It's interesting that there isn't one community. We're mixed, some people have work in North America and both in Israel, so we're all one community, but we do realize that we need to sometimes go deeper on local issues, and that's why we had the Green Funders Forum focused on Israel, and now I hope you're going to focus also on North America, the people here. I think what I wanted to share with you today is the point of having a peer network by example of what we do here in Israel. So it can give you ideas on what you can do as a network together, and also to know that you can use us as a resource for whatever you would choose to do. So basically, the Green Funders Forum is sort of a learning group that serves funders and foundation professionals to understand what is going on the ground in terms of the environmental activities, what is also missing, and what are the opportunities to collaborate together. We offer, thanks to our supporters, some of them are here. Marla Stein, for example, the co-chair of the Green Funders Forum, is supporting the forum actively, and also the Glazer Foundation, and Sherry Fox that we lost recently, unfortunately, and we miss her terribly. But the group that started working together offers consultations, one-on-one consultations for funders. So whenever funders want to know what is the best way to move ahead, dilemmas even from board meetings, due diligence to NGOs and things like that. So this is something we offer in Israel. We also have Zoom sessions and site visits, so we can feel what is happening on the ground. And I think the main point of having a peer network is also to collaborate. And we encourage collaborations, and I'm happy to say that we have already 3 collaborations happening. One of them is the PI, a Climate Action Fund, working on mitigation in Israel. The other is Shelley Fund, working on grassroots activism. And there is a new collaboration starting to happen that is going to work both in North America and in Israel. And we're going to dedicate a special program to understand what is happening there. So I think when we look at this very, very complex issue of climate, it really makes sense to collaborate. And this is why we need to learn together, to join this community together. And maybe some of you will also join funding together. We were happy that some of the efforts that we worked on in collaboration really made some impact. For example, We worked on creating a unified lobby for the environmental NGOs. So several funders joined forces together. We had a collaboration of funders around education, how to get all the content possible in the education system in Israel. We had a collaboration between funders on how to build capacity. It's something we started working on. So there are many issues to work on, and I think every funder can find their own way and perspective to work on climate. Some funders, we're helping them in intersecting climate into their work in the Arab society, for example, or work on employment. And recently, we're also working on how to recover the north and the south in Israel in a more sustainable way. So we have plenty on our plates, and if you're interested in doing something in Israel or already doing, then please use us as a resource. But I'm also offering our assistance in thinking about what to do as a group of funders. And I'm here to help with that. And I hope you'll take the initiative. I just want to share also that part of the secret weapon of the Green Funders Forum, Marla Stein and some others are people that are actively bringing people to the calls, and they invite other people, other funders to join in the conversation. And once we're a vibrant community, we can create more impact. I think one of the main issues that I hear often from funders is why does it make sense to have Jewish climate action? And I think it's partly something we're going to discuss today. And this is something maybe unique to working in North America, because for us in Israel, it's obvious, we're all in Israel. We have a whole bunch of issues to work on with the government, and the Jewish population in North America as a minority is a different situation. But there are many unique issues, and I'm happy that JFN is taking the lead and helping you work together. So basically, just to say that we're here as a resource, and good luck with this new effort, and I'm here to help.
Thank you so much, Gil. And Gil and I will be back after the next segment of our conversation to facilitate a broader conversation with all of you. For now, though, I want to welcome Tamara Abrams. I'm gonna spotlight you, and then I'm gonna introduce you. Hi, Tamara. So if you all don't know Tamara, she is a JFN member. She runs her parents' family foundation, which focuses on Jewish life and on addressing the climate crisis. Tamara became interested in the climate crisis while she was pursuing a master's in public affairs at UC Berkeley a few years ago. She is active in her congregation's Climate Tzedek Committee, which shares information and resources to help congregants electrify their homes and their buildings. She is also, I believe, a current climate-based fellow. So she is deeply immersed in the climate field as a learner and a funder, and also recently convened a conversation about climate funding at the JFN West convening. So some of you may have been part of that conversation, and hopefully that conversation will now begin to infuse this space as well. So Tamara, I would love to invite you to share your what you would love to see happen in this space, and why you think this is really valuable and important for JFN and for the climate funding space.
Sure. Thank you so much, Beth. And it's great to see all your faces here, and I hope to see you in person sometime soon. Like I suspect many of you, I've been really eagerly awaiting a Jewish climate funders group. I knew about the Israel one for a while, and I've just been like, oh, I want to have this connection and opportunity to meet other Jewish funders and learn together. I am not an expert. I will just say that off the top. My parents' foundation started funding Jewish life, and has done that for a long time. And in the last maybe 3 or 4 years, I came to the conclusion that everything that we're working on is just going to be harder and more expensive if we don't also address the climate crisis. And so we're now funding both, and there's some intersection as well. And so I'm looking forward to learning together with you to be strategic and impactful. And I feel like it's more energizing and fun to work together and learn together. So with that, I would like to introduce Mark. We're going to have a little conversation. Mark, probably many of you know him. He's the founding CEO of the Ronald S. Roadburg Foundation, which he joined in 2022, shortly after the foundation was established. Previously, Mark served as CEO of the Jewish Federation of Greater Vancouver and as Executive Vice President of the Jewish Federations of North America. In between his federation roles and joining the Roadburg Foundation, he created Community Network Consulting, which focused on nonprofit organizations' strategy, community planning, and organizational development. We're so happy to have you here, Mark, and you've been an incredible leader in this area. So I'm going to start off. We're going to have sort of a conversation with some visual slides when it seems appropriate. So Mark, you lead a very young foundation, launched in 2021. And why was climate on your agenda from the start?
So climate was, first of all, it's great to be with you. And Tamara and I actually had opportunity to be together in person this past week because she was up in Vancouver. It's nice to see a lot of familiar faces on the screen. So the climate was on the agenda because the board put it there in their sort of foundational conversations as they were getting organized and sort of looking at priorities. This was really right among the key areas that they were concerned about, and as a board that had a lot of discretion to give shape to what the agenda of the foundation would be, we focus on building and strengthening communities, strengthening vulnerable populations, and tackling some complex social issues affecting society. This and addictions are the two complex social issues that we're kind of looking at, aside from the other two buckets, not that they're not complex. So it was just there from the start.
You mentioned to me a little bit about your theory of change with respect to climate crisis, and I'm wondering if you can share that with
Sure.
us.
So I'm going to pull up my screen. Everyone can see that okay? We're good? Good. So as a young foundation, we've sort of understood early on, like in every area we work in, kind of need a theory of change. We need a roadmap. Every single area is big and complex. There's lots of things you could do. Gil talked about that in his comments, and we kind of need to figure out, like, okay, what's our path going to be? So even in our first couple of months, we engaged a consultant to work with us to do some research and help build a theory of change. And it's not that we have the one answer. It's like, what's right for us? So this is what it looked like, a little over 2 years ago when we first articulated a theory of change for climate. You see like reduced greenhouse gases at the bottom. That's the bottom line net effect that we're looking for. Like, we don't solve that problem as humanity. Like, we're literally cooked. So we kind of thought about this, and that, like, this is an attempt to kind of put it all on one page. Like, there's probably a 10-page document that goes with this. But if you wanted to sort of understand in a snapshot, we try to do this each time we create a theory of change document. How do we get it on one page so people can understand? And so, like, we kind of looked at like 3 major buckets: technology and innovation, citizen engagement, public policy. And then you can see at the top, like, smaller buckets that kind of feed. Not all of those smaller buckets feed all of the 3 major themes we could work in. But you look across them, and this is, I would say, also a particularly Canadian lens with a big emphasis on wilderness, wildlife, water conservation, as well as Indigenous led initiatives. You probably wouldn't see that necessarily quite so robustly for, south of the border, let's say. But after 2 years, we've kind of narrowed the focus. Like that previous version, like that's a lot of things to focus on, a lot of things to learn. And I would say a little bit through some early experimentation and a little bit through how we are also reacting to events that have unfolded around us, including, the period since October 7th. We've kind of narrowed our focus down to two major themes. One is what we would call a concentration on climate solutions, and that's really aimed at developing a sustainable economy, getting the business world moving on these issues, which we think is, obviously government has a huge role to play, and they have a huge role to play in creating a sustainable economy. But if we actually don't get the business community on side and moving towards sustainable ways of operating, we probably can't overcome the challenges that we face. And then the second is really looking in a positive way at the intersectionality, particularly in Canada, around large-scale conservation needs and goals, and the fact that most of those lands historically are tribal lands of First Nations in Canada. And we're in a moment where there's a lot of focus on reconciliation in Canada with First Nations. And so we're kind of leaning into very significant opportunities that are presenting themselves to support Indigenous-led conservation efforts. So I would say that's kind of, today, if you ask us, this would be our snapshot answer of like, what's our theory of change? Where are we leaning in here?
Thank you. I can imagine that was a lot of work in the change as well, and trying to figure out what your current focus is. Which brings me to this huge development. Roadburg recently signed on to this landmark $405 million Canadian climate funding commitment. Could you talk to us about this? How did you come to take a significant role? How do you allocate funds? Anything else you want to share about that?
Yeah. So I would say, there's some serendipity here, and I would say, like, we are not yet. I mean, we've made a serious commitment, but I wouldn't say we're not the driver of this. We actually only came to the table as it was kind of getting ready to close and announce in November. We learned about it in late September as a bunch of us were at a National Canadian Philanthropy Conference. But it did come about because we'd started to hone in on climate solutions as our space. And so we went into that conference looking to network with other funders in Canada who, were operating in a similar space. And they were like gearing up for this big announcement. And we kind of said, well, that actually is quite an opportunistic opportunity for us to kind of like build the network of who our peers, who our partners are, beyond the Jewish community in the wider philanthropy space, and knowing that we were planning to commit significant funding to climate. In any case, it was like kind of a no-brainer to say, well, if this is about focusing the philanthropic community and drawing attention to the need and making a big splash, we could be part of that. We could help with that effort. So we were among 9 funders, and you see across the top row, like really the 3 foundations that are leading the way across Canada. But beyond those top 3 who've been in climate for quite a long time, we're the 3rd largest commitment in the bunch at $18 million. There was immediately quite a significant media splash, on the day of the announcement, after the day of the announcement, and hopefully it will continue. So certainly on the level of sort of drawing public attention in wider society to the need to focus on climate, it had that intended impact. But what we're now hoping also is that this will give us a network to play with on the climate solutions agenda, as we learn from the larger foundations that are involved and think about places where we can partner for bigger impact.
Well, thank you for that. My understanding is that you are the only, I'm sorry if there's background noise here. You're the only Jewish funder in this coalition, and I'm wondering how that's been. Have you shown up as a Jewish funder, what that experience has been like, and how to bring that identity into this climate space?
Yeah, I'll stop the share here. So I should correct, we're not the only Jewish funder. There's a single individual, Alan Schiff, out of Toronto, who is also a Jewish funder, but we're the only Jewish foundation, Canadian Jewish foundation, that is in the mix. And I think, the fact that we committed $18 million is not an accident. It's a very Jewish number. At the announcement event, we had an opportunity, each funder, to talk about, to say just a few words, and sharing with the organizers why we chose $18 million. They actually gave us a little extra time just to talk about why 18 is important, in a Jewish context. But when they asked us the question about, as a young foundation, why are you committed here? I gave a different answer. I talked about, a Jewish tradition rooted in creation, in the creation story, like other cultures, and how that's the root of a Jewish commitment to responsibilities to nature, and to preserving nature, and addressing these issues. So, being able to show up in a space where it's mostly non-Jewish funders around the table, sort of being ourselves in a very public way as a Jewish funder, is an opportunity, and probably in this very complicated time after the last year and a bit, maybe even a more important opportunity.
Which brings me to another issue that has arisen at least for me, and I know for some other people, navigating the Jewish identity and being Jewish in this complex space of climate and environmental funders. And I'm wondering if you've experienced any issues that you've navigated, and how you've done that.
So there have been issues. I wouldn't say they're necessarily severe, but we were in discussion with some environmental organizations at the time the war broke, or also indigenous organizations that kind of went dark on us. They just basically ghosted us, stopped their conversations with us. And we're actually a funder that doesn't have an open grant process. We go find the groups we want to talk with. So if you're already in dialogue with an organization, they go quiet on you. It's very noticeable. Like what happened here. So first of all, we talked about this last year, shortly after the war broke. We adjusted our grant agreements, our template, to kind of incorporate the need for organizations to kind of recognize they need to stay in sync with our values and priorities, and has some language around how we might seek to resolve that if issues arise. We haven't faced a moment where we've needed to do that with any existing grants that we had already made, but now we are proactive about it when we're in discussions with new grantees, to say, look, you got to know we're a Jewish funder. We fund in Israel. That's a problem for you and your leadership. Let's talk about that now and not have a problem down the road. So I think people appreciate that. That's we're just being very direct about who we are. I think I'll leave it there, and we can sort of go further if people want in the conversation.
Thank you, Mark. Another question that I have that's come up for us and other funders is that the climate crisis calls for a massive and urgent need for funding. But many funders feel like we're already committed. There's so many things going on. Like one of our emails back and forth, Mark, you said there's fires and floods constantly right now, and metaphorically and realistically. And so I'm wondering, I know that the Roadburg Foundation funds in other areas. I'm wondering how you navigate this tension between the urgency and limited resources and multiple priorities.
Yeah. So, I think our leadership's approach to that was to, say, we're not going to, we were actually in discussions about whether we should increase our climate funding further than where we already were, which is not insignificant.
You don't want to have to listen to this, do you?
maybe if one of the moderators can mute them, okay, if they don't want to listen. Our board was already in discussion about maybe even going further than where we already were on climate, and then the war broke, and like we didn't, we suddenly had many other pressures on our funding demands, but we didn't pull back. We didn't pull back in any area as a result of the crisis. The board committed that like we would spend more. Not every funder is going to be in that position. We're fortunate to be in a position to be able to do that, but I think it's also reflective of a perspective that like if a core part of thinking about why do foundations exist, in part it's for a rainy day. Like we are in the rainy days when you look at the state of the world, and whether it's this issue or other issues, we're in the multi-crisis environment. So I think it also, we need to challenge our assumptions about like what we think we can afford to fund. Like what are the options for us if we hold back now, and what are the potential consequences? So, I think that's just part of the challenge of our time. And I think each funder has to kind of resolve that on their own within the context of their reality. It's not for me to say, others can afford to do more.
Thank you. So I think we're nearing the end of our conversation point. I'm just wondering if there's any question that I didn't ask you that you felt like was urgent that you wanted to get across before we go to
No, let's open it up to the group.
Okay.
Great. Yeah, we can go ahead and open the conversation up if folks have questions for Mark. And I'm gonna just put us all back in the room together. You can see everyone. Feel free to, this is not that large a group. So if you have questions that you want to follow up on, or issues that you would like to tease out that came up that you'd like to hear more about, feel free to raise your Zoom hand, or add it to the chat, or go ahead and go off mute and just go rogue and ask it. Oh, okay, so there's a back channel question coming to me, which is, Mark, talk about how you understand meaningful impact in the climate work that you are investing in.
So my colleague from our foundation, Trilby Smith, is on the call. She's new with us, both as the program officer responsible for this portfolio, but she's also our chief learning officer. And we are in the midst of a series of internal conversations that she's taking us through across our spectrum about like, how do we understand what impact we're having, and how do we learn along the way? So I would say, we are so new that like, I wouldn't say we have really formed answers here. But I do think, it kind of flows through, it flows from like, well, okay, how are you defining your theory of change? In this area, we're very clear, like it's really about reducing greenhouse gases. And so, we kind of ultimately want to look at, well, each of the things that we're investing in, how does it ultimately contribute to that bottom line impact? And, if you're investing in sort of public policy, it can be hard to kind of say, well, this public policy, translates into this many, metric tons of greenhouse, of carbon removed, from the atmosphere. But at least you can kind of understand theoretically, like, if it's policy that's regulating, certain kinds of enterprise or certain kinds of outputs from industrial processes, whatever, like you can kind of get at it that way. But there are many, many softer things, that kind of, kind of come into the picture, and it's not always easy to, sort of get to that bottom line impact. So I think, probably at this stage, I think the most important thing I would say is like, while we're thinking about those questions and we're having those discussions with our grantees so that we're all thinking about it. And, we don't come to grantees to say, here are the metrics we want you to use. We engage in a process with our grantees to say, well, please help us understand how you're defining success. Let's see how that syncs up with what we're trying to accomplish. And then let's think about what are the sort of interim reporting steps along the way that help you know whether you're on track. So we're trying to balance that, desire for us to know we're having the bottom line impact, but also trying to, sort of lean into, sort of the ethos of a trust-based philanthropy approach, or, in a Canadian context, sort of not so top-down approach from a funder perspective, and really engage our grantees and hopefully build some capacity among our grantees for them to be thinking in that kind of way.
Great. Oh, I see a finger up in the air. Is that maybe that's
Yeah, that's me.
great.
Hi, I'm Judy Tell, also from Vancouver, founder of the Oasis Foundation. And my question is for Mark, because I heard that one of your priorities is working on Indigenous issues, and yet you also mentioned that the Indigenous community ghosted you. So how is it that you can bring that forward?
Yeah. So I should just be clear. One Indigenous organization ghosted us. I wouldn't,
Oh, okay.
so I wouldn't want to, sort of tar and feather the whole population there. Look, first of all, the Indigenous community in Canada is not monolithic. In British Columbia alone, there are more than 200 First Nations, many of them very small. So it's quite a complex sort of subset of Canadian population. There are certainly some within that world that are kind of, I would say, in the very woke spaces of, progressive groups and quite vocally anti-Israel. And there are many others who I would say, there are some who are very vocally pro-Israel, who see in Israel the Jewish claim to indigeneity in the land of Israel for Jews, and sort of get it on that level. And I would say most just don't really know very much. And that's actually probably emblematic of most of the, most population groups that you might think about. You've got hardline people, pro and con, and you got the vast majority in the middle who actually don't really know very much. So I think, we look at that as an opportunity to engage with people and to educate. And in any case, in funding in Indigenous spaces, they want to know who you are and why you're there. They come with a lot of suspicion after seriously traumatic, horrible colonialist experiences. Like their issues are real, and it can take quite a lot of time to develop trust. But when we lead with our story, as Jews, both, what I talked about in terms of sort of a Jewish tradition that's rooted in a creation story, but also, a Jewish understandings of our indigenous homeland, which is the land of Israel, and you use that language, you talk about multi-generational trauma and experiences, shared experiences of, damage done to, language, culture, arts, etc. It's a language they actually can understand and appreciate, and realize that we actually have, a lot of shared experiences and a lot of shared values. So, the key is actually getting into the conversation and using the conversation to talk about ourselves in ways that are actually relevant to them.
So I've had one other question, and I think this is a good place to shift to maybe start shifting towards a more open conversation. So we know JFN includes funders with a huge range of available resources. You've already addressed the the challenge of having multiple commitments and intense urgency around the moment and the need. So I guess this was a question that was posed to Mark, but I actually want to open this up to Tamara too, because I know that it's something you both think about. And the question is really about advice for funders who are coming into this space and who are not in a position to make a huge financial commitment. How can small grants be impactful in the face of this vast challenge?
Do you want me to start off here? So, yeah, we're small. So, you know, that question is so pertinent. The climate crisis is everything, right? So what I'm doing, and I'm actually actively doing this strategic, impactful thinking right now, because we just opened up funds to be able to do this. And what I've learned from people who know a lot more than I do, I listen to a lot of people and, you know, check out webinars and people who are really experienced. And the advice that I've gotten that really rings true for me is to do some basic research and then find areas where I feel really connected. I feel like I care about that issue, or it feels like, you know, if it's local, it could be, you know, helping put solar panels on synagogues, because there is a ripple effect that has been shown statistically that when there's a public solar panel, that homes around there will install solar panels. Or whatever the issue is, like if you care about oceans or trees or regenerative agriculture or whatever it is, like go to that area and just dive into that one space for a little while, and then, you know, you'll find a smaller organization maybe that feels resonant, or a bigger one that you can have a connection with and feel like your dollars are being put to good use. So that's what's been working for me. You know, I love that we're doing this collaborative, because then we can share experiences and learn with each other and say, hey, I've done this thing, and do you have any advice, or what's been your experience with working on, I don't know, like I just learned about mangroves and sea kelp, and I mean, it's like, it's endless and it's exciting. And, you know, if I want to work on one thing with oceans, maybe I'll work on restoring mangroves because that feels right to me. I don't know. So that's my co-learning response to that question for now.
Mark, do
You
you
know,
want to add anything?
yeah, just very briefly, like, yeah, this is a really big field, and, you know, it's like a kid in a candy shop. There's a million things that could draw your attention, and the reality is almost all of them need to be done. So, you know, I think I wouldn't spend too much time agonizing over, like, how do I find the most impactful, the most, you know, the biggest thing, you know, that I can support. I think just start, and you'll learn by doing, and learn from others around you, and you know, you'll sharpen your thinking over time, and that's fine. Like, it's more important that we get more funders in the mix working on different pieces of the puzzle than we try to corral people around the one thing that, you know, that is going to solve the problem. There's not one thing that's going to solve this problem. So, but it shouldn't desist, you know, it shouldn't dissuade us from starting, right? Lo alecha hamlacha likmor, like we, you know, our tradition teaches, like, don't let the magnitude of the task dissuade us from taking it on.
Well, I think that's a perfect transition. Thank you both so much for this conversation and for, you know, modeling for us the kind of learning and exchange and knowledge building that we're really hoping to start building in this new Green Funders Forum in North America. And we really want to open this up for a broader discussion with the time that we have left. So Gil is going to join me in facilitating this part of the conversation, and we want to pose, I'm going to throw a couple of questions in the chat. So there are really two questions we want to invite you to think about and consider sharing with the folks in this space right now. The first is, what would you like to gain from being in this group? What are things that you would like to learn? This is a little bit of R&D for me organizing this space. Tell me what you want to learn about, and I can try and program it in the coming months. And also, what do you bring? Because as you, Mark and Tamara have both said, there is so much ground to cover. So there are so many different facets of climate. What might you bring from your own work and your own interests and your own investments and strategies and expertise that you might want to offer or contribute to your fellow members? And I think we might volunteer somebody to help break the seal and kick off the conversation. Gil, did you want to pick a
Yeah,
brave?
I just want to say from our experience in our sessions that this is valuable time for you to share, so feel free, and it's a closed conversation, and we'll keep it this way. So maybe just to start, just really, really briefly, I want to invite Mitchell Schwartz to say a few words, and then Jeff Hart, and we'll open it up for others to share. And please, if you can also share a dilemma or something you want to learn and something you can offer to this forum, something you're involved in or something like that. So maybe Mitchell, you're muted. And then we go to Jeff.
Sorry, he picked me because he knows I'm loud and not shy, but I'll just be completely upfront. I started a nonprofit a couple of years ago. Lee Barkin, who's on the call, is on it. It's called the Jewish Solar Challenge. And I met with Tamara when we were in San Diego, and she knows a little bit about it. And I say it because the goal is, like somebody said, to put solar on every Jewish nonprofit in the country. And we started a couple of years ago. We just did a grant cycle. We're up to 14. One of the problems is, or one of the issues is, we give out money to put out solar on buildings because we want to have an immediate impact. We want to reduce solar right away, reduce costs. And like I think Tamara said, it's a visual symbol for everyone to kind of rally around a little bit. But one of the things that we try to do, one of the keys is to make the impact much greater, is to have these institutions do all types of programming to promote sustainable behavior. And in order to do that, you have to have buy-in from the community. And more than buy-in, the buy-in does come. People want to do the right thing. They want to recycle and do a lot more. But you have to find people in the community in positions of authority and ideally in staff positions. If the executive director is involved or there's actual buildings and grounds people attached to it, it can't just be all volunteer led. Otherwise, what we found is a lot of the stuff falls apart. They'll start gardening. It'll last a couple of years and then somebody gives it up. So you have to have that. I'm not sure what I could bring other than we are trying to do this, and what we learn, we want to always, of course, share best practices. But what we are doing, and it's wonderful to see, is trying to collaborate with groups. And that's what I hope to find from this is who can we collaborate with? Obviously, we want money. That, as a foundation, as a somewhat new nonprofit, of course, we want money, jewishsolarchallenge.com. But for this group, we want to also meet people that we can collaborate with. And I'll finish with this. With Jenny Rosen, we happen to have a call with Diano tonight and my temple because to pursue what their initiatives are. Somebody I thought was on here from Adama, but maybe not, who Adama, oh, there she is, Rachel, sorry. So Adama has worked with a bunch of the nonprofits that we're giving grants to. And when we see that on the application, we like that because we know that they're going to be involved and do all these sustainable programming. So collaboration amongst different people is the one thing, is a big thing that we want. And then the other is we need more buy-in from the institutions themselves. And that's a dilemma, not a dilemma, that's a challenge, is to really make sure that you have that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mitchell. Jeff, collaboration. I'm thinking about yours.
Toda rabah. So when you just to answer the question about, why Jewish and green, I think the Jewish people have a great experience with existential issues, and we like we like to say literal tikkun olam. So for those two things, I think we're very well suited. Our soul is in this space, and so just two things that I've done personally because of the feeling is start something called the Climate Solution Prize in Israel, using the brain power of the startup nation to help solve the climate crisis. With the fringe benefits of helping the Israeli economy and climate diplomacies. We've given away a few $1 million there, working with JNF, who's been our key funder in Kakal in Israel. And then we've also done one in Canada. So that's been one area. We've also worked closely with JFN in helping engage. And one thing hopefully you'll hear a bit more about in the future with that same theme of engagement and leverage is something called the Jewish Climate Trust. Stephen Brofman and Michael Sonnenfeld leading that with bringing together lots of great philanthropists and trying to become a trusted centerpiece. So just like you might give to your local federation as the trusted centerpiece for getting things done and reducing duplication. So really leveraging all the foundation money that wants to be active in a trusted way for more impact. So hopefully you'll hear more about that future, and you'll be pleased to know that one of the initial considerations aligns with the things you were talking about, helping green Jewish institutions across North America and make it easier to leverage funds to do so. So I'm sure we've already engaged with Adama, as Mr. Schwartz mentions, and we'll add you to the list and seeing how we can engage further. So there you go.
Thank
And
you,
thanks
Jeff.
everybody for being here today and being involved. We need all hands on deck.
Thank you so much.
Definitely.
We have hands up. This is great.
And also, I want to give Marla also the stage for a minute, and then we'll continue. Marla?
Oh, hi. I just thought I would segue from Jeff. I'm here in Israel and I'm the co-chair of the Green Funders Forum here. In terms of climate tech, so we are very involved in climate philanthropy, and we're also involved as activists, but we also in parallel do a lot of impact investing. And I know I see a lot of impact investment people on the call, Vanessa, Yuval, Jeff, I'm sure others as well. And I do feel like it's a way to express our values in the different pots of money that we have. And I definitely think that philanthropy is critical. You can't tech everything, every solution, but it's really important to look at where you're putting your money. And I'm going to just shout out to Dayenu with that. Dayenu has a whole effort right now, a whole campaign to really encourage people to go fossil free on their investments and do what you can. So that's a really important pot of money. Dayenu is fantastic. And other organizations that were mentioned as well, but I wanted to make sure that Jenny's a great resource here. By the way, we're involved in startup and also in public equity. In other words, where your stock funds are as well.
It's great.
Thank you,
I love hearing how much you all are collaborating already. Yuval, do you want to jump in? I see your hand up. Oh, but you're muted now.
Maybe Liana first?
Okay, let's go to Liana.
Hi, everyone. This is very exciting. I'm very happy to join here and see how it's all unfolding, and very instructive to learn from others who are corralling their resources toward these goals. I brought this up at a previous JFN conference, and I just feel like it's important to put it in the space, which is the power of food in climate change, and how we as a Jewish community and as funders can do a lot more to put a spotlight on the role of animal agriculture in particular in contributing to environmental degradation. And, as we talk about the greening of institutions, there's so much work going on in the wider world around procurement right now, and how food policies are created for institutions in local governments and in national governments. There's work going on in Denmark. There's work going on in a big way in New York City. And I would really love to bring more of that conversation into this one, so that our Jewish institutions can take a really critical look at food, which is a taboo subject for many reasons. But we need to tackle it head on because there really is no way to solve climate change without addressing the fact that we slaughter 90 billion animals annually and have to produce a lot of waste as a result of that.
Thanks, Liana. I see you
Yeah.
while you're on camera now.
Yes, I was
wanna jump in?
able to finally unmute myself and pop up. So first of all, thank you very much for this conversation. I'm based in New York. As Marla mentioned, when it comes to climate, I'm involved as an impact or values aligned investor. But my other big interest and where I do a lot of my philanthropy is through politics. And what I've always been interested in, especially in the United States, is trying to find ways to impact climate through politics. Because if we were talking earlier about, with limited funds, how can you make a big impact? I think, really one of those areas is educating and trying to get our political leaders fully on board and understanding the situation with climate. And so I'd be interested in seeing if there was something this group could include in that arena.
Great, thank you so much. Melanie.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much. It's great to be part of this conversation. And I'm with the Jewish Life Department at UJA Federation of New York, and specifically Planning and Allocations Committee on Diversity, Action, and Justice. So all three of those words are really important when I think about our perspective and how we come to invest in climate and environmental work. And we've done it with Adama and with Dayenu, and we're currently in those spaces. And I want to say that I think the Jewish engagement potential is super important. Also, the spiritual engagement potential, very important. And then most recently, we've always been supportive of Jews showing up in coalition work. But in the climate justice space, it's even more important for this moment and for all moments, building relationships across lines of difference. So I would say that those are the kind of headline priorities for our Jewish life work right now, even though UJA is also trying to invest in an even larger range of environmental activities and support.
Great, thank you so much. Wow, that's a whole new bucket of topics and intersections to include in our conversation. Thank you. I want to circle back, Vanessa. I saw your hand up earlier and then not. I want to make sure that you have a chance to speak if you still want to.
Thank you, Beth. Really nice to be here with all of you. Familiar faces from Israel and US, most recently from the West Coast, the gathering a few weeks ago. I think something that's been sort of stirring in my mind that I'm passionate about and trying to put the pieces together, sort of like, refrigerator magnetic poetry. As Marla mentioned, I'm on the impact investing side as well as the philanthropic side, as I know many of you also use both of those tools in your toolbox. One issue in Israel, there's a group called the Israel Forum for Impact Economy, led by a woman named Vanessa Kaczerginski. There are two Vanessas in Israel. I'm Vanessa B, she's Vanessa K. They've been working with the Ministry of Finance to do blended finance mechanisms for rebuilding of Israel. And I think I'm sort of at the nexus of climate and investing here. I think there's a huge opportunity as green funders to put together a collaborative that would leverage philanthropic funds, investment funds, and then use the government's sort of available resources in the best and most impactful leveraged way. So if people are interested in exploring that as sort of a continued conversation, I'm happy to facilitate and bring in Vanessa K from IFIE. And I know, Gil, I'm sure there are a lot of, amutot in Israel that have ideas for how that can be implemented in the best way, sort of that respects the needs and wants of the kibbutzim and communities.
And we'll definitely have another program on the sustainable recovery of the North, and also an update on what's going on the
Right.
South. So we'll bring several options and resources.
And I also just recognizing that there are folks here who have been deeply involved and are deeply involved in the Green Funders Forum in Israel, and others who are coming new to this work and are focused more exclusively from the North American side. I do want to just preview that our intention is to run on parallel tracks and collaborate on a regular basis. So there are some topics like impact investing that I think will, bridge geography. There are some places where geography and domestic politics may be more of a specific interest to one group or the other, and other places where it will make sense to combine forces. And we look forward to really doing both, walking and chewing gum. And so we will have many opportunities to meet all together in the future, and also to meet in separate groups. And before we say goodbye, I see Judy, I see your hand up. Do you want to add something else in before we wrap up?
I think I missed a half a sentence. Were we all supposed to say the areas that we are most seized by? Is this
the question was what you hope to learn or gain from the group, and what you might have to contribute.
So, okay, well, I can answer that in just a few sentences. Our foundation has existed for some 30 years, and environment was always part of it. The area that we had the most success with was in dealing with organizations that were holding governments to account with things that they had promised and yet not done, whether that be suing a government or mostly it was in the legal domain. We also helped start an environmental law center at the University of Victoria. Now what we're trying to do is to move more into program-based things in addition to the legal domain. And like somebody else said, finding things that are on the smaller end is proving challenging because there are so many, and because we have had experience with giving money and then it not being used for what it is that that we had requested that it be used for. So actually hearing about initiatives that are working that way, or how to sort of winnow down, would be very helpful to us.
Great. Thank you so much. And I know we are right at our time for today. So I want to thank you all for joining us and helping us start off with so much enthusiasm and urgency and willingness to share your expertise and collaborate and build knowledge together. I really look forward to joining with you all again in the coming months. We will have a session in January. Stay tuned for that date in the next week or two. We look forward to sharing information about that with you. And please feel free to reach out with questions or ideas for sessions, and we look forward to seeing you in January.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, and
Thank
thanks
you.
again to
Good
Mark
see you.
and Tamara and
Thank
Gil.
you. Bye-bye.